The range of different shows on this channel has allowed me to discuss a wide array of topics, but there's still far more mysteries, unexplained sightings, and other things we lump together under the umbrella of paranormal. Over the years researching topics for this channel, I've compiled together hundreds of spooky and mysterious things and created a system for loosely labeling these mysteries into 13 groups, which I'm calling the lycanthropies. In each episode of this new series, I will look at 13 different mysteries that touch on each of these categories. As many entries will fall into multiple categories, you'll never know what subject will end up getting more coverage. But whatever your favorite is, there'll always be something to pique your interest. With all that said, let's take a look at my selection for tonight. My name is Anunnaki, and I welcome you all to Route 13. In Worcestershire, England, there lies a quaint village named Hagley, with a local legend concerning an old tree and an unidentified body found therein. On April 18, 1943, 4 boys were trespassing in Hagley Wood in search of bird eggs, but discovered something far more sinister. One boy had climbed a tall wych elm in search of a nest, instead finding a skull with locks of hair still attached. The boys hurried home and agreed to keep their discovery a secret, but the youngest boy was incredibly shaken by the event and told his parents of what they had found. Police would arrive later that day to investigate, finding an almost complete human skeleton within the trunk of the tree, missing only the right hand. The body was approximately 5 feet in height, wearing a blue dress, 1 shoe, and a golden wedding ring. A few teeth were missing, and clenched between the jaws was a section of fabric. Forensics quickly identified the body as that of a woman who had died at least 18 months earlier. She had likely been a mother, and had to have been placed within the tree prior to rigor mortis. Further investigation also found the missing hand buried a few feet away from the tree's trunk. Despite all the evidence, police were unable to find any positive matches for who the mysterious woman could have been. As this was during World War II, missing persons reports were incredibly high. A year later, a message was graffitied on a wall in Birmingham which read, "Who put Bella down the wych elm? Signed, Hagley Wood." Many similar messages would appear around the town shortly after, all with the same handwriting. The writer remains a mystery. Many theories came about concerning the body that was now named Bella. One theory was of a sex worker named Bella who had gone missing some years earlier. One theory claims 2 men placed a drunk woman inside the tree as a prank, and she never climbed out. Another popular theory is that she was a spy who parachuted into the tree and got stuck. These theories fail to account for why she was possibly gagged and why her severed hand was buried nearby. One more interesting theory claims that this was for a ritual involving witchcraft to create what's called a hand of glory, but Bella's death and remains don't match this ritual very closely. The most likely explanation is that Bella, or whoever this woman was simply a housewife who was murdered for one reason or another. Her killer hid her body in the tree and never reported her missing, giving no leads for investigators to go on. Not many things are more frightening than finding human remains, except maybe a pair of monsters. In the Yamanashi prefecture of Japan sits its capital city of Kofu, and in 1975, various residents of Kofu reported a very strange sighting of glowing orange lights in the sky. But no sighting was as incredible as what 2 young boys encountered in the evening of February the 23rd. Supposedly, the boys had seen one such glowing orb descend to the ground, revealing itself to be a large metallic disc that emitted a sharp cracking sound like sparks or the ticking of a clock. The boys, Masato Kawano and Katsuhiro Yamahata, approached the craft and saw a pair of occupants emerging. short in height, with brown wrinkly skin, metallic fangs, long pointy ears, bright silvery clothing, and unnaturally long arms. One uttered a noise which sounded like a tape recorder playing in reverse. The creature then placed its hand on Yamahata's shoulder, which caused the boy to fall to the ground. Kawana was quick to collect his friend and get the both of them as far away as they could. The boys returned home and told their mothers of what had happened, and, of course, they were met with skepticism. Nevertheless, the boys convinced their mothers to visit the area, and to their amazement, the group witnessed the supposed flying saucer glow a bright orange before zooming up and away in a blinding flash of light. Naturally, this whole event became the talk of the town for a while. Children at school drew many pictures of the UFO and its supposed occupants. Skeptical parents and law officials went to investigate the site to debunk the story, but what they found was even stranger. A pair of large concrete pillars had been knocked over, a feat requiring a tremendous amount of force, with a large circular ring left where the saucer was said to have landed. One schoolteacher collected soil from this ring, which was later proven to be radioactive after testing. Many residents of Kofu would continue to brush the boys' story as a work of their imagination, though their detailed accounts of the event remained consistent even today. The idea of UFOs and aliens may be relatively recent, but reports of strange things in the sky date all the way back to ancient times, as we'll see in our next case. A news article written all the way back in 1561 in Nuremberg describes a most peculiar event witnessed by many locals in the weeks prior. Centuries before the world would be engrossed by the idea of aliens and flying saucers, this article describes what many interpret as a great battle of flying objects in the sky above the city of Nuremberg. Written by Hans Glaser, the article describes that in the morning of April 14th, between 4 and 5 a.m., a dreadful apparition occurred on the sun, which was soon seen by many men and women of the city. It said that there was first a pair of large arcs that stretched across the sun, both blood red in color. These were followed by large spheres that were black in color, and red spheres that encircled the sun in a ring-like formation. Crosses, rods, and more great spheres were seen, which appeared to engage one another in battle. These rods and crosses produced smaller spheres which flew towards the sun and its ring, and the sun too produced spheres which flew back at the objects. After about an hour, the objects seemed to become fatigued or damaged, losing their color and crashing down to the earth, producing an immense smoke before vanishing entirely. Finally, an enormous black spear or spade-like object was seen, which pointed towards the west. After the arrival of the sphere, the fighting seemed to stop and the sky returned to its normal state. The article goes on to interpret the above events in a religious context, speculating that it was a sort of miracle or sign from God, or possibly a warning or show of God's abilities. Many modern interpretations, such as that of psychologist Carl Jung, highlight how the broadest interpretation of the events was those of divinity and military might, leading some to believe it was either a fabrication or over-exaggeration of natural phenomenon. If the UFOs were living organisms, one would think of a swarm of insects rising with the sun, not fighting one another but to mate and celebrate the marriage of flight. This wouldn't be the last time a news outlet would report on strange phenomena. However, what makes the next case so fascinating is how the mysterious objects didn't disappear in smoke. September 4th, 1985. British paper The Sun published "Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy Picture" as its headline, detailing a series of house fires linked together by a supposedly haunted painting, known as The Crying Boy. The painting was created by Giovanni Bragolin in the 1950s, where it became very popular. By the 1980s, the widely distributed piece had many alternate versions, all depicting teary-eyed boys and girls. It wasn't until 1985 that a fire officer in Essex made the puzzling observation that the painting was found at the scenes of multiple house fires that he had responded to, and that, most interestingly, they were all untouched by the flames. No singes, no smoke or ash, nothing to suggest the paintings were anything short of brand new. Giovanni Bragolin was actually the artist's pen name. His true identity, Bruno Amarillo, wasn't readily known to the general public at the time, so the mystery behind the painting's creation led to many theories and urban legends. The most popular legend states that a boy named Don Bonillo was responsible for setting his home on fire and killing his family in the process. Now an orphan, Don was found in the streets by a painter who wanted to depict the raw emotions the boy displayed, nicknaming him Diablo. After creating the painting, the studio too caught fire mysteriously, and it said that recreations of little Diablo's expression, in turn, recreate the flames that took his family. While it's a very interesting story, this all seemed to have originated from a 2000s book called Haunted Liverpool. As for the mysterious circumstances of the paintings and house fires, it's actually not that mysterious once it's given a little scrutiny. The first thing to note is that the paintings were treated with flame-retardant varnishes. This was common for many paintings of this type and not unique to those of the crying boy. The most flammable piece of the painting would be the string holding up the frame, causing it to fall face down after said string burned away, further protecting the painting from the flames and increasing the odds of it being relatively unharmed afterwards. The final nail in the coffin is that this painting was far more common than house fires. Thousands of copies circulated Europe over the decades and could be found in homes all over. The grand majority of these homes, of course, never caught fire. The supposedly haunted paintings may have been unnerving to some, but I find the story of this next ghostly photo a bit more chilling. The story goes that in the 1950s, the Cooper family had just finished moving into their new home in Texas. To commemorate this event, the family gathered around a nicely set table as the father took their photograph. But while there were only 4 people seated at the table, a 5th person appeared in the photograph, upside down, falling from the ceiling. Sounds like the perfect ingredients for a ghost story. Average family moves into new home. Turns out the place has an unexpected tenant lingering around, and the proof is in the picture. Or is it? The image seen here certainly looks the part. However, it didn't surface online until 2009 with little story behind it. On October 15, 2013, the story seen above was posted on 2 different websites, Acid Cow and Playground.ru, each basically describing the same thing. For a while, many people were convinced it was a hoax. The final nail in the coffin came in 2015 from a forum user named Robert C., who claimed to have been one of the boys in the picture. When my older brother sent me this link, I was floored. We were the 2 boys in the picture. Well, we were back in 1959. I have many pictures like this one, but not this one. My mother had a habit of throwing away pictures she didn't like. Eventually, the ones she kept were passed along to me. What annoys me is that somebody got a hold of an old family photograph. The story is almost entirely fiction. Our last name is Copper, not Cooper. Does anyone know who did this? Robert went on to show other photographs which very convincingly proved he was indeed telling the truth. The mysterious phantom can also be matched to unrelated pictures of ballerinas. So, mystery solved, right? Well, no. If Robert was telling the whole truth, then that means we still don't know who ended up creating the hoax. Ghost or no ghost, somebody had to have stolen this old discarded family photo, with enough information about the family to basically copy their last name. In the end, I think the most unnerving part is the possible invasion of privacy here. Hopefully, whoever was responsible didn't do any trespassing like our visitors in our next case. The following footage was captured in the late 1990s by a man named Jose, a local resident of Fresno, California. Jose had set up a surveillance camera in an attempt to uncover who had been trespassing on his property. While his hunch was local stray dogs, what he uncovered was far more bizarre. Seen here is what appears to be 2 white figures of an unusual shape and size walking across Jose's yard. The strange creatures have since been named the Fresno Nightcrawlers. The quality of the footage makes it very difficult to discern their exact anatomy, but it's generally agreed they're simply a head situated atop 2 legs, roughly 4 feet in height. The footage ended up capturing the attention of Sci-Fi Channel's Fact or Faked, in which several members of the show visited Jose and attempted to debunk the footage. They tried kids and puppets but were unable to get a match. After citing 2 unidentified heat signatures during an overnight investigation of the nearby woods, they concluded the case to be unexplained. If this was a hoax of some sort, they must have done a pretty good job to beat professional-grade special effects artists. Jose's footage wasn't the only of its kind, as similar figures were later recorded strutting through Yosemite National Park, again seen in a pair, and now in an area that complicates certain methods of hoaxing. It deepens the mystery of what they might be. Aliens, undiscovered cryptids, maybe ghost legs looking for their upper halves? What's most peculiar about the sightings is their resemblance to carvings made by local Native Americans. The carved statues depict beings that are effectively heads on tall legs, the spitting image of the Nightcrawlers. Native lore of these figures elaborates that these are beings from another world, a very swampy one where long legs are needed for navigation. Supposedly, they're here to help humanity reunite with nature. Perhaps their noble efforts could help shed some light on this next anomaly. Located near Dumbarton, Scotland, sits what appears to be an ordinary bridge. Built in 1895, it was intended to allow for safe passage across the river below. However, in the years that followed, the structure instead gained a reputation for death, but maybe not in the way you might think. You see, the Overtoun Bridge is home to a peculiar phenomenon in which dogs commit suicide by jumping off the side into the 50-foot drop. The exact number of animal deaths is unknown, but ever since the mid-1950s, more than 50 dogs have met their fate in the Overtoun Burn, the river that the bridge spans. One story claims that one dog survived the fall, only to climb back up and leap off a second time. The cause of this phenomenon has yet to be explained, but there are a few recurring factors. Many of the dogs are breeds with long snouts, most tend to jump from the same side, and the event typically occurs on days of clear weather. Factors of sight, smell, and sound have been examined by canine psychologist Dr. David Sands. His suspicion is that the layout of the foliage on either side of the bridge creates a sort of illusion that there is level ground on either side, especially to dogs who have a lower vantage point. The scent of urine from local minks may then lure the unsuspecting dogs to casually hop over the edge. But this explanation isn't accepted by all. Even Sands himself admits it's far from definitive. Some locals even point out that the area isn't home to any population of mink, and many other locations should also cause this phenomenon. So, why does it only happen here? It should come as no surprise that many believe the cause to be paranormal in nature. It's said that the area has long since been home to fairies and other natural spirits, and more than a handful of human deaths add the possibility of a ghostly presence. Clearly, whatever's haunting the place doesn't have a fondness for dogs. But who knows? Maybe the spirits are just looking to adopt some ghost dogs to keep them company. Overtoun Bridge is definitely a strange place, but sometimes the strangest places can form naturally on their own. The Brule River flows just over 40 miles from Vista Lake into Lake Superior. However, part of this river crosses through Judge C.R. Magny State Park in Minnesota, where a most curious natural landmark is found. You see, here the river splits in two. One half continues down a 50-foot waterfall, while the other half flows down into a large hole and disappears. The Brule River isn't just a weak stream. An estimated 40 million gallons disappear into the Devil's Kettle every single day. That's a lot of water. Where does it all possibly go? This question has been asked by visitors to the park for years, and you can bet they've tried to find out. In the world of water tables, what goes down must come up. People have thrown rocks and sticks down into the hole, ping pong balls, even GPS trackers, all in hopes of discovering the other end of where the water comes out, all to no avail. According to legend, one visitor pushed their entire car into the hole. Now, while the hole itself is big enough to fit a car down it for some distance, the lack of road leading up to the heavily forested area makes getting a car up there basically impossible. The destination of the water remained a mystery until late 2016 and early 2017, where the water flow at the top and bottom of the river were measured. They found a flow of 123 cubic feet per second upstream from the Devil's Kettle, and 121 cubic feet per second downstream of the Kettle. In other words, the major lack of missing water in the end means the half of the water that disappears into the Kettle eventually seeps back into the river from below at a negligible loss. It was concluded that the objects thrown into the hole end up getting pulverized and eroded away by the constant rushing of water, so that nothing substantial was left when the water finally resurfaced downstream. After decades of wondering, we were finally able to put an end to the mystery of this geographical wonder. While the Kettle has found a satisfying explanation, there's said to exist another mysterious hole leading into the earth, one said to be a gateway to hell. Located in the Liberec region of what is now Czechia, Houska Castle was constructed in the 13th century under the orders of Ottokar II of Bohemia. Beyond its traditional Gothic architecture lies a couple unusual features. Built atop a cliff far away from any trade routes, it has no kitchen and no reliable source of water besides collected rainwater, and fortifications that face inwards instead of outwards. It's said that the castle was built not to comfortably accommodate its occupants, but rather to guard against a gateway to hell. Located underneath the castle's chapel is a large natural hole that cuts deep into the limestone. So deep, nobody has ever seen the bottom of it. Before Houska's construction, locals believed that monsters would emerge from the hole to kill livestock and kidnap villagers to drag back down into the hole. Prisoners of the time would be offered a full pardon if they agreed to be lowered into the hole via a rope. One young man was lowered into the darkness, and after only seconds, he screamed and begged to be taken back up, and returned in a very different state. Now appearing sick, wrinkled, and hair as white as snow, it was as if the prisoner had aged 30 years during his brief moment down in the hole. No matter how much dirt and rocks were thrown into the hole could never be filled, so the castle was constructed around it to keep the evil from getting out. The hole was covered with large stone plates, and the chapel built atop was dedicated to the Archangel Michael. During World War II, Houska Castle found itself occupied by German forces who apparently carried out various occult experiments involving the hole to the underworld, and many monsters were said to have emerged from the hole during this time. A man who is half frog, a horse with no head, and many flying shadowy creatures. Today, the castle offers guided tours and has even been featured on several ghost hunting shows. While still allegedly haunted, the many monsters have apparently returned to their dark abyss, so long as nobody disturbs them. But suppose some dark entity did escape and roamed the countryside. You might hear reports like the following. Devon, England, 1855. A night in early February saw a phenomenon that was incredibly common for the setting, a heavy snowfall, and not long after, it was followed by a less common phenomena, a set of footprints in the fresh snow, left by cloven hooves. Prints of this shape can be expected from a range of animals that could be found in the area, but what makes this case noteworthy, even today, was the distribution of the prints. Roughly 10 centimeters across, each found in mostly a straight line, roughly 20 to 40 centimeters apart from one another. This path of prints continued like this across nearly 100 miles, significantly further than any cow or goat would travel in what could have only been a couple hours. More bizarrely, they ran through open fields, across rooftops and over high walls, over delicate things like sacks of hay, and even through drain pipes that were as small as 10 centimeters wide, continuing along the other side. No obstacle could stand in the way of whatever or whoever left these prints behind. The later issue of Bell's Life in Sydney published a weekly dispatch in its miscellaneous extracts column. It appears on Thursday last night there was a very heavy snowfall in the neighborhood of Exeter and South Devon. In the following morning, the inhabitants of the above towns were surprised at discovering the footprints of some strange and mysterious animal endowed with the power of ubiquity, as the prints were to be seen in all kinds of unaccountable places, on the tops of houses and narrow walls, in gardens and courtyards, enclosed by high walls and palings, as well as in open fields. There have been many explanations for the footprints given over the years. The most common claims the witnesses were simply mistaken or lying, or the entire case was a few unusual footprints being massively blown out of proportion. Another theory is that the prints were left by a weight suspended by a balloon, although that raises a lot more questions like how it miraculously traveled such an erratic path, bobbing up and down consistently without ever getting caught or tangled by any of the obstacles it trampled over. Other explanations include badgers, hopping mice or other rodents, and a menagerie of escaped kangaroos. Maybe Devon, England really was visited by the devil that winter. It wouldn't have been nearly as strange as this other chilling visitor. The state of West Virginia has historically been home to many cryptids and pieces of American folklore, and the year of 1966 was a particularly eventful one, as it's when the infamous Mothman sightings took place. It was also the year of a much stranger visitation. On the evening of November 2nd, 1966, a Mr. Woodrow Derenberger was driving through Parkersburg, West Virginia on his way home, when he spotted a remarkable object in the sky. Woodrow described an old-fashioned kerosene lamp chimney, flaring at both ends, narrowing down to a small neck, and enlarging in a great bulge at the center. This bizarre object landed in the road in front of Woodrow's truck, and out from its center stepped an even more bizarre occupant. A man who appeared ordinary in almost every way, save for a devilish ear-to-ear grin. The grinning man approached Woodrow's truck and they conversed for a bit. "Why are you frightened? Don't be frightened. We wish you no harm. We only wish you happiness. What do they call you? I am called Cold." The strangest part is how Cold never moved his mouth. He spoke directly to Woodrow's mind, grinning the entire time. Cold said they would meet again in the future, and left. After Woodrow reported the sighting, others came forward with similar reports of UFO sightings. One person reported seeing Cold, but was too frightened to stop and chat. Woodrow Derenberger claims that Cold did indeed visit him and his family again, multiple times over the next month, teaching us more about our visitor. His full name was Indrid Cold, and he was an alien from the planet Lanulos in the galaxy Genemedes. Not everyone's encounters went as well as Woodrow's. The Lilly family of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, reported poltergeist activity and strange lights inside their home. Their daughter, Linda Lilly, awoke one night to see a grinning man in her room. It was a man, a big man, very broad. I couldn't see his face very well, but I could see that he was grinning at me. He walked around the bed and stood right over me. I screamed again and hid under the covers. When I looked again, he was gone. Grinning aliens who also speak directly to our minds isn't the most straightforward explanation, but it could surprisingly explain this next case, which has baffled medical experts. In 1984, an extremely bizarre case was published in the British Medical Journal by a Dr. Ikechukwu Abailu Azunye. The patient of this case was a woman in her 40s referred to only as AB. AB was born in Europe in the mid-1940s, settled in Britain in the late 1960s, and subsequently found success in her career and in starting a family. She enjoyed good health for the many years that followed. That is, until the winter of 1984. AB was at home reading when, out of nowhere, she heard a voice in her head, which said the following: "Please don't be afraid. I know it must be shocking for you to hear me speaking to you like this, but this is the easiest way I could think of. My friend and I used to work at the Children's Hospital, Great Ormond Street, and we would like to help you." The voice continued, "To help you see that we are sincere, we would like you to check the following." And 3 separate pieces of information were relayed to AB, all of which turned out to be correct. However, AB was instead convinced that she was losing her sanity and sought out psychiatric help. It was here she met with Dr. Azunye. After some therapy and medication, the voice subsided and AB resumed her ordinary life. Sometime later, while on vacation, the voice returned, this time with a more urgent warning about her health. As Dr. Azunye reported, they told her they wanted her to return to England immediately, as there was something wrong with her for which she should have immediate treatment. The voice this time gave her a specific address, that of the CT department of a large London hospital. The voice also said that she had a brain tumor and that her brainstem was inflamed, and urged her to have her brain scanned. Finally, in April, AB was scanned, which turned up unusual results, and a more thorough scan in May identified just what the voice had described, a large mass on the left side of AB's brain. Doctors there suggested that immediate surgery would be ideal, something the voice agreed with. After the tumor was removed, the voice appeared one last time and said, "We are pleased to have helped you. Goodbye." AB never had any delusions or heard any voices after then. Dr. Azunye put it best, writing, "It is well known that intracranial lesions can be associated with psychiatric symptomology, but this is the first and only instance I have come across in which hallucinatory voices sought to reassure the patient of their genuine interest in her welfare, offered her a specific diagnosis, directed her to the type of hospital best equipped to deal with her problem, expressed pleasure that she had at last received the treatment they desired for her, bid her farewell, and thereafter disappeared." Who can say whether or not AB imagined the voices? But as we'll see in our next case, imagination doesn't always mean the ghosts aren't real. In 1972, a group of parapsychologists met in Toronto, Canada, to conduct an experiment in which they would attempt to make contact with a spirit named Philip Aylesford. The catch? Philip Aylesford never existed. Conducted by Dr. A.R. George Owen and overseen by psychologist Dr. Joel Wilton, the aim of the experiment was to fabricate a fictional entity and then attempt to communicate with said entity to determine if paranormal phenomena are imagined or if they arise from real-world factors. The test group of 8 was able to create a narrative for Philip that held the basis in real-life historical events, albeit with a few errors and contradictions. Philip Aylesford was born in England in 1624. Following an early career in the military, he was knighted at only 16 years of age. Philip became close friends with King Charles II and worked as a spy for him during the English Civil War. He had an unhappy marriage with a woman named Dorothy, later falling in love with an unnamed Romani girl. The girl was burned at the stake for witchcraft, leading Philip to commit suicide in 1654 at the age of only 30. With the story set, the group conducted a series of seances in an attempt to make contact with Philip. The results, unsurprisingly, showed no signs of contact from the fictional Phil. However, under the guidance of Dr. Owen, the conditions of the tests were changed to resemble more traditional seances, such as by dimming the lights and isolating the participants. Soon into testing, participants reported instances of unexplained phenomena such as breezes, strange noises such as echoes and unexplained knocks, and multiple instances of tables moving, shaking, and one instance of a table tilting itself up on one leg. Knocking sounds matched responses to questions about Philip's life, and the participants claimed that they could really feel the presence that Philip, or something similar, was making contact, fully knowing that Philip was fabricated only hours earlier. The Philip experiment has been heavily criticized for its unconventional testing methods, unreliable results, and reliance on anecdotal data from the participants. Many, however, see the experiment as a breakthrough in parapsychological research, citing it as evidence that poltergeist activity results from the human brain under certain conditions, rather than something like a spirit or ghost. Others speculate that the participants may have inadvertently created a tulpa, a shapeless spirit that is given form and will by its creators. Thereby, the group's belief could have brought Philip into existence. I hope you all enjoyed this premiere episode of Route 13. This world of ours is a crazy one, and there's still tons of things for me to cover in the future. If you missed the announcement on my channel, this is one of several pilots premiering together as a showcase of different shows I'm interested in doing more of. So if you want to see more like this, then please be sure to give the video a like and tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. Until next time, this has been Zenonaki, and I thank you for watching The Twilight Road.